Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really digging into the Metro Atlanta real estate market.
Yeah, there's been some chatter, hasn't there? We've got that recent Realtor.com article talking about a home sales slump.
Exactly. And we're going deeper, pulling in what local experts Andrea Wright and Rachel Mooney have been seeing based on their YouTube talks around late April 2025.
So, our mission here for you listening is to get a real handle on the dynamics in Metro Atlanta's housing market right now.
We want to cut through the noise, separate the big headlines from what's actually happening on the ground.
And hopefully pinpoint the key trends and maybe where the opportunities lie. We're looking at national stuff, but also really local data.
Okay, so let's jump right in. That Realtor.com headline, Home Sales Plunge. Sounds pretty dramatic.
It does. Nationally, the numbers showed what? Existing home sales down about 5.9% year over year.
Yeah, and when you zoom into Metro Atlanta, it was similar, down around 5.5% compared to last year.
Okay, but 5.5%, what does that actually mean in terms of houses? That's where it gets interesting.
Right, so the actual numbers for Metro Atlanta.
Yeah.
March 2024 saw 4,724 homes sold, and March 2025, 4,465 homes.
So the difference is 259 homes.
Exactly. 259 fewer sales. So is that really a plunge?
Well, our local experts, Andre and Rachel, their take was not really a plunge, no. It's more a reflection of pricing realities, I think.
Pricing, that seems to be the recurring theme. So let's talk about how long homes are sitting on the market.
Okay, the median days on market right now is sitting at about 23 days.
23 days. That doesn't sound too bad on the surface, but I gather there's a big difference if the price gets cut.
Oh, absolutely. It's night and day. If a home sits there without a price reduction, the average time balloons to like 114 days.
Wow, 114 days.
But if the seller does make a price adjustment, that average drops way down to just 11 days.
Okay, that is a stark difference. It really hammers home the importance of pricing it right from the get-go. What about showings? How much foot traffic are listings getting?
The median number of showings is hovering around 5.
Just 5.
Yeah, but again, it depends. For those homes that are priced well and look good, they sell faster median of about 11 days, like we said, and they get more action, typically around 9 showings.
So for sellers listening, the message seems clear. Price it correctly, make sure it presents well, and you'll likely sell quicker.
Definitely. And for buyers,
What's the takeaway for them?
well, it looks like the potential deals might be found in those homes that have been lingering a bit longer, say 60 days or more on the market. Sellers might be more willing to negotiate then.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into some more specific Metro Atlanta stats from around the time of these recordings. What jumped out at you?
Well, looking at new listings, say for a typical 4-bed, 2-bath home, the median list price was right around $500,000.
Okay.
But we also saw a lot of price drops. 1,681 listings had reduced their price.
Which ties right back to what you said about homes sitting longer if overpriced, right?
Exactly. It suggests sellers were maybe aiming a bit too high initially. Then you have the expired listings,
Homes that just didn't sell.
right? 137 of those. Their median list price when they started was $460,000, and they sat for about 90 days before the sellers pulled them. Probably a price issue again.
And what about homes going under contract?
For active under contract, again looking at 4-bed, 2-bath, the median list price was $460,000. Although the very latest pending sales were slightly lower, around $449,000 median.
So maybe a sign that accepted offer prices are softening just a little bit.
Could be. It suggests the final negotiation is bringing prices down slightly from the list price on those recent deals.
And completed sales, what do those look like?
Okay, for closed sales, let's look at 3-bed, 2-bath for this. The median list price was $450,000, and the median sales price was $445,000.
So pretty close. What's that, like 98.88% sale to list?
Yeah, just under 99%. And these homes moved relatively fast, median 18 days on market. Shows that well-priced stuff in that range is still selling.
Okay, but that one figure, the $50,000 gap, you mentioned new 3-bed, 2-bath listings were median $500K, but the ones closing were median $445K list, $450K closed. Wait, let me recheck. New 4-bed list, $500K, closed 3-bed list, $450K, sold $445K. Okay, but still, there's that gap between new listing hopes and closed realities.
Exactly. Even comparing similar property types, that difference between what new sellers are asking and what recent buyers have actually paid, it highlights a disconnect.
It really points to needing good advice on pricing in this more nuanced market, doesn't it? They called it a skills-based market.
Absolutely. It's not just putting a sign up anymore. Now, maybe we pivot a bit to the bigger economic picture, like unemployment and interest rates.
Yeah, that was interesting. The idea that counterintuitively higher unemployment unemployment could actually be good for interest rates. How does that work?
Well, the basic theory is if unemployment goes up, people spend less, which cools down demand in the economy. Less demand can mean lower inflation. And if inflation cools, the Federal Reserve might feel less pressure to raise interest rates, or could even, lower them to boost the economy. It's a bit backward sounding, but that's the idea.
It's definitely complex. And Andrea shared that story, didn't she, about her clients losing jobs right before closing.
Yeah, really brings it home. And it also touched on something interesting about employment stats.
What was that?
How licensed real estate agents or loan officers might be counted as employed, even if they're not actually, doing deals or making much money.
Ah, I see. That's a wrinkle. And that statistic was wild. 74% of licensed agents didn't sell a single house in the past year.
Yeah, 74% really shows how tough the competition is right now for agents.
And it connects to changes from Dodd-Frank, too, right? Affecting how mortgage lenders get paid.
Right, moving more towards hourly wages instead of just commission. They even mentioned a specific figure, like $7.11 an hour in some cases, which changes the whole business model for them.
Definitely adds context. Now, what about job openings? We hear there are lots of jobs open, maybe even more openings than people unemployed.
Yeah, that's the paradox. Lots of openings, but maybe not the right openings for the people looking. Or maybe a skills mismatch.
So jobs are out there, but they might not fit what people can do or want to do.
Seems that way. But, overall, the job market is still considered pretty healthy. There are opportunities.
It's a complicated picture. So with all this uncertainty, this potential for, fear, how do people navigate that?
That's a huge point. Andrea mentioned another agent's approach. Just take action. Don't overthink everything into paralysis.
Yeah, avoid getting stuck analyzing forever.
Right. And that analogy she used. Oh, wait again, but it's not.
I like that. Acknowledges the feeling, but reminds us the fundamentals are different.
Exactly. Don't get stuck in the negativity. They talked about a 5-minute rule. Feel the frustration. Okay, 5 minutes now, move on.
And a book recommendation, Embracing Fear.
Yeah, by Tom Rettold. Distinguishing between fear as a bully that stops you and fear as an ally that guides you. It's useful framing.
And the political climate adds another layer of anxiety, doesn't it? Regardless of where you stand.
For sure, there's unease from different directions. But the advice was to focus on the real estate fundamentals. What's the price of the house? What's the cost of money, interest rates? And do I have job security?
Kind of grounding it back to the personal level.
Yeah, they said, we work with Main Street, not Wall Street. Those big headlines don't always hit home immediately.
That's a good reminder. What about the stock market connection? People getting nervous about retirement accounts.
Yeah, there were anecdotes about that panic. The advice was pretty simple. If you're not taking the money out soon, try not to obsess over the daily swings.
Easier said than done sometimes, but probably wise.
And then there was that point about the U.S. government being a huge player in the stock market since, the 1929 crash.
Right. And the underlying reason being?
Basically maintaining business stability to prevent massive social unrest. It's about keeping things from completely falling apart.
So it's about managing emotion versus logic when you see market swings.
Pretty much. Slow down the emotional reaction, let logic catch up, and just expect volatility. It's kind of the norm now.
Okay, so given all that, what are the tea leaves saying about interest rates going forward? And how might that affect home sales?
Well, the expectation seems to be that Treasury rates will continue to be a bit of a roller coaster, was the term used.
Sounds about right.
Projections for mortgage rates by the end of 2025 may be settling somewhere around 6.3% to 6.4%.
Which historically is not terrible, right? Rates
Yeah.
under 7% are generally workable for buyers.
Generally, yes. People tend to adjust to that level. Now, as for sales volume, 2024 finished with about 4.1 million existing home sales nationally.
Which is fewer actual houses sold than in the boom years, right?
Fewer units, yeah. But the total dollar volume was still huge. So for agents, it might mean a bigger slice, potentially, but of a smaller pie overall.
So keeping that pipeline full is crucial.
Absolutely essential in this market, though there was also talk of anticipating a slingshot up in activity eventually.
Interesting. And how did the start of 2025 compare month to month with 2024?
It was a bit mixed. January 2025 actually saw more sales than January 2024. But February 2025 saw fewer than February 2024. So kind of a wash overall for the first couple of months, roughly even.
Okay, let's circle back to pricing again. It feels like the absolute key right now. Relying on those crazy 2021, 2023 appreciation rates, seems like a mistake.
Oh, a huge mistake. That period was an anomaly. The guidance now is look back to a more normal market, like 2019. Start there, add maybe 5-7% appreciation per year, plus the value of any major upgrades. That's a more realistic starting point.
So using recently sold comps might even be a bit misleading for setting a current price.
It can be, yeah, because there's that lag time, right, from when a deal is made to when it actually closes. In a shifting market, that sold data might already be slightly stale.
This really is a skills-based market, like they said. You need to be able to explain the why behind the price.
Exactly. You can't just point to the house down the street that sold 3 months ago for X amount. And remember that saying,
Which one?
best to be the first love, second wife, third realtor.
Huh. Meaning the seller might need a couple of failed attempts with unrealistic pricing before they listen.
Pretty much. They gave that case study example, didn't they? Listing at 875K when the data strongly suggested 825K was more realistic.
Right, using data to bring the seller around.
And the fact that the average price reduction we're seeing is around 8%, that clearly shows many listings are starting off too high.
Okay, this all feeds into the big affordability question and that perennial debate. Rent versus buy. What was the take there?
They circled back to that Gary Keller idea, keeping housing costs around 35% of income for long-term stability.
And the argument against long-term renting.
Well, rent goes up with the market, right? You're paying off someone else's asset. With a fixed mortgage, even if taxes and insurance rise, your main payment is stable and you're building equity.
They said are pretty dismissive of arguments favoring renting that ignore the asset building part.
Yeah, they definitely emphasize the ownership aspect and stress the need to talk about creative financing with buyers.
Like what kind of options?
Things like 100% loans, down payment assistance programs. Some are even forgivable, meaning you might not have to pay them back.
Are those widely available?
They exist, but there was a note of caution. If interest rates drop significantly in, say, 2 or 3 years, those subsidy programs might dry up, so there's maybe a window.
And debt-to-income ratios are still a major hurdle for people.
Huge hurdle. But lenders are getting creative. They mentioned bridge loans and also mortgage recasting.
Recasting, how does that work again?
Okay, so say you buy a house, maybe sell your old one later or get an inheritance. You can make a big lump sum payment on your new mortgage after closing. The lender then recalculates your monthly payment based on the new, lower principal balance without you having to refinance the whole loan. Fairway Independent Mortgage was mentioned as offering this.
Ah, okay. That could be really helpful for lowering payments down the road.
Interesting. Now, a quick detour, AI in contracts. Sounded a bit alarming.
Yeah, just a mention of an agent apparently using ChatGPT to write special stipulations. It was really just a reminder that, you need real human expertise, legal and real estate for contracts. AI isn't ready for that.
Definitely a cautionary note. Okay, switching back to supply. What's the outlook for new construction? Builder confidence.
Actually, some good news there. Builder confidence seems to be up, and new permits are increasing. That's positive for eventually easing the long-term housing shortage, even with current inventory ups and downs.
But there was a potential issue in Forsyth County, a building moratorium.
Yeah, a mention that Forsyth might consider pausing new building permits. The expert view was that could be a mistake financially for the county in the long run. Okay. Let's drill down into some hyperlocal numbers now. Greater Atlanta, Forsyth, Fulton, Cherokee counties. What are the trends there?
Right, so median sales price year over year, Metro Atlanta overall, basically flat, down just 0.1%.
Okay.
But look at the counties. Forsyth is down 3%, Fulton, though, is up 4.3%, and Cherokee is down 1.9%.
So some definite local variation. Why the differences?
It could be a mix of things, maybe more negotiations happening now on homes needing repairs after the boom, or maybe just more lower-priced homes selling in some areas, pulling the median down.
Gotcha. And what about median days on market in these areas? You said earlier it's maybe not the best metric right now.
Yeah, in this kind of shifting market, it's being called a lying stat. It gets skewed by the super fast sales and the ones that sit forever. It doesn't really tell you how fast a well-priced home is moving.
So if that's unreliable, what should we be watching closely at the local level?
Better metrics right now are things like median showings until pending. That's running around 7 to 9 showings. And the average total showings per listing, which is lower, around 4 or 5. If a house is getting very few showings, that's a big red flag for price.
So the takeaway is, if you're priced right, you should expect maybe 7 showings or so,
Yep.
and an offer within, what, 12 to 15 days.
Roughly, yeah. That seems to be the pattern. And sellers need to be ready to adjust price quickly, like within 48 hours if the initial showings just aren't happening.
Using things like coming soon or open houses can help build buzz too, right? If the price is right.
Exactly. It creates some urgency. But if you do overprice, you're looking at those long days on market, maybe 100 plus dairy, and getting a lower percentage of your original asking price in the end.
Right. Okay, let's finish up by looking specifically at the luxury market, say homes over $700,000 in metro Atlanta. What's happening there?
It's really stratified. Below $1.5 million, it still feels like a seller's market inventory is tight, under 3 months supply. Between $1.5 million and $2 million, it's more balanced, maybe 6 months of supply. But once you get over $2 million, it definitely shifts to a buyer's market. We're talking 10, 15, even more months of supply in some areas.
Wow. And specifically in Forsyth County, luxury listings are way up,
Yeah, active listings over $700K there nearly doubled year over year.
which means more choice for buyers, more competition for sellers.
Absolutely. But importantly, you need to look at what's going under contract, not just what's listed. Sales are still happening year over year, but there are also more overpriced listings just sitting, inflating the inventory numbers.
So are luxury homes actually selling in Forsyth?
Yes. Pending sales over $700K were actually higher this March compared to last March. Closed sales were slightly lower, but that reflects deals made earlier.
And the overall supply in Forsyth luxury?
Around 5.7 months, so heading towards that buyer's market territory. It's higher than in, say, Alpharetta, which tends to be a bit tighter.
Are sellers getting their asking price in Forsyth luxury?
Less often. The median percent of original list price received is down maybe 96% compared to 98% last year. More negotiation.
And days on market?
Technically, median days on market decreased year over year, but again, that stat is unreliable right now. What's really telling is price reductions.
How many luxury homes took a price cut?
In Forsyth, about 45%, and in places like Midtown, Sandy Springs, Vinings, it was even higher, more like 8–11% reductions on average for those that cut.
So nearly half are having to cut their price.
Right. And there's a huge difference in the final outcome, price, and time on market for listings that cut versus those that didn't. Plus, a lot are failing altogether.
Failing, meaning expiring or being withdrawn.
Yeah, about 45% of luxury listings in that analysis failed to sell on their initial listing term. It really shows the risk of overpricing, especially at the high end. Taking an overpriced luxury listing is, well, it's a costly gamble for an agent with a low chance of success at that price.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, this deep dive into Metro Atlanta shows a market that's definitely adjusting, maybe normalizing.
Seems like it. Sales volume is, relatively steady overall, but inventory is definitely up, especially higher end.
And the absolute non-negotiable for sellers is realistic pricing based on today, not 2022.
Couldn't stress that enough. Buyers, meanwhile, have more breathing room, more choices, particularly if they look at homes that have been sitting a bit or are in those higher price brackets.
It's crucial to look beyond headlines, get that hyper-local data, and maybe take metrics like days on market with a grain of salt right now.
And don't forget those creative financing options are out there for buyers facing affordability hurdles.
Right. So the final thought for you listening, in this market mix of, let's say, challenges and opportunities, what concrete steps can you actually take?
Yeah.
Whether you're thinking of buying, selling, or just trying to make sense of the economy.
Yeah, and maybe ask yourself, what specific local data points would be most helpful for you to keep an eye on as things continue to evolve? Something to chew on.